friends, and welcome back to Tutti Talks, the podcast where music and conversation come together. I'm your host, Aveline Shinky, and I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, Adam West and Noah Carr. We're also joined by our special guest, Dr. Sookkyung Cho.
Hello.
Hi. In today's episode, we'll be talking with Dr. Cho about her career path as a pianist, how she got started, what her time at Juilliard was really like, and how she eventually found her way to GVSU. We get into the projects she's created on campus, like the Grand Valley Piano Chamber Series and Grand Valley Community Engagement Music Project, her approach to teaching and learning new music, and the role classical music plays in the world today. It's a conversation full of insight and meaningful perspectives, and we're really excited to jump right into it. Dr. Cho, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, of course. First question I want to jump into here, which is something I ask all of our guests, is could you briefly walk through your history with music, when you started learning piano, what made you want to start playing, what schools you got your degrees from, and what you're doing now career-wise?
I started piano when I was 6 years old, 5 or 6. My mom taught me for a year, and then I went to a different teacher. Piano wasn't my first love for music. Singing was my first love. And I sang in children's choir from 3rd grade up until 6th grade. And then I got into music school, music magnet school in my middle school, so 7th grade. And I conducted class choir for about 4.5 years, middle school and high school. And that was really my passion. Singing and conducting and piano kind of just came, on the side. And then my dad had a visiting position at the University of Rhode Island, so we relocated to Rhode Island when I was in the 11th grade. In the summer of that, and I barely spoke English, and that's when I really fell in love with music because now I felt like I could communicate with music instead of with words. And I had an amazing teacher in Boston who taught me how to love music. Even though I had been in music school before, I think that's when I really felt like I wanted to be a musician. And so 2 years of high school, and then I went to Juilliard for undergraduate and Peabody Conservatory for my master's, and then went back to Juilliard for my DMA. And then I freelanced for a year, I think. I had never freelanced before, and I thought to myself, if I want to teach students in the future, I should really know how to freelance. And I freelanced for a year, and then the following year, I had a position at New England Conservatory Preparatory School, where I had also gone to as a high schooler, and as well as Johns Hopkins University and Peabody teaching theory classes for a year. So I was commuting between Boston and Baltimore for a year, and then that's when I auditioned for this job at Grand Valley, and then following year, 2015, I believe, was when I got the job and moved to Michigan.
Yeah. Was there anything that specifically led you to Grand Valley, or it was just kind of an opportunity that popped up?
So after DMA, so I, chose to freelance. I didn't apply for jobs right away. And people told me that I wasn't going to get considered anyways without a DMA. So I didn't even apply before getting a degree. And then while freelancing that year, I applied to a bunch of jobs. And I think I made it to maybe one campus interview at a small school. But then the following year, I was teaching in Boston and Baltimore, and I really, really loved doing that. And I could kind of see myself sort of living in Boston, maybe, even freelancing. So then I was a little bit more selective about where I wanted to apply for full-time jobs. And as a Korean single lady, I wanted to move to a certain part of the country. So I only applied to certain parts that I wanted to move to. And this was one of them. And this actually worked out very fast. I think the interview was in like January or February, and they let me know like a week or two later. It was actually one of the snow days. The Grand Valley was open, but all the public schools were closed that day. And I had never seen, I grew up in Korea, so I know what snow was. Like we have 4 seasons, and I lived in New York, and all that. But I had never seen snow being so white, and I loved it. And I thought, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And I had never gone to school with big campus, and that was always my dream to be in a school with a big campus. And so I loved it here. It was like, I was like, oh, this is it. I'm coming.
That's good. The snow sold it for you.
Yes.
That was good.
So getting to another question, what pianists and composers shaped your playing today?
I mean, there have been so many people who've helped me grow into the person who I am. I mean, people that are alive, that are dead, a lot of people. I mean, I consider like 70% of what I know about piano playing, I learned from Mr. Borisowski, who teaches at Peabody.
Mm-hmm.
And so he really taught me how to play, how to express myself, and how to execute it, execute my thoughts on the piano. But in terms of musicianship and he's a beautiful musician. I learned so much, from him in those regards too. But that musicianship came from, really all over, classroom teachers. For example, your training teacher at Juilliard, Nadia Boulanger, really, famous pedagogue. So her method came from that tradition. So it was extremely strict, but it really taught me how to listen. So, for example, I have what people call passive perfect pitch. So I can hear notes and tell you what those notes are, if it's on a piano or violin or like instruments in general.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone asks me to sing a certain note without a reference note, then it's really hard for me to do that. So if you were to ask me now, okay, can you sing an A? I probably wouldn't be able to. But if you played on the piano, then I'll probably be able to tell you what that note is. So when I hear a chord, for example, C major chord, I immediately hear C, E, G.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a function, instead of whether it's a major or minor, or at least like in, back in undergrad, that's how it was when I was a freshman. But she really didn't want us to hear note names. She really wanted us to hear functions of the chords. But then, 1, 4, 5, 1, those were all very new to me. So I would write down C, E, G, and then erase them later and then figure out the function. And she would take points off if she saw, those markings. So doing that type of training for I did ear training for 3 years. It really taught me how to listen for tonic and dominant and subdominant, and to notice whether the third is present or not. In fact, I just heard someone play some improv earlier, and this person kept leaving out the third, and it was driving me crazy. My body was reacting, please do not leave out the third. I need that third in the chord. So something like that, came from her, where and music theory, I loved doing music theory. And in fact, that's how I paid for my master's degree, being an assistant. And just hearing a piece as a structure, a big picture, not like as I feel like this way, therefore I'm going to play it that way. I hate that kind of playing. It's not that I hate it. It's more like I need something that's well thought out. So that when I hear the piece, I hear, that is the world that was just created. There was a beginning, there was a middle, there was a conflict, there was a resolution. And I felt like this emotion, like the emotional journey had made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And theory class that I took at Juilliard really, really was formative for me to hear things that way. And there was also my teacher at Juilliard in undergrad who kept telling us, it doesn't make sense, or, it now makes sense. And that made no sense to me whatsoever in the beginning. But by the time that I graduated, that made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being able to hear the structure when someone plays or when a piece is presented. So there's that, and so many teachers, right? And also some concerts that I've been to that just by being there, I learned so much, and it just stays with you. For example, Yevgeny Kissin's concert in Chicago several years ago. Actually, that was one of the first concerts that I attended after I got this job. And I was sitting at the top of the Chicago Symphony. His sound was just floating in the air somehow. It was never falling to the ground, and one was connected to the next, and it was beautiful. Or concerts that I heard at Carnegie, I can probably go on and on and on. And all those things or like in your Metropolitan Opera. It taught me so much, and still does.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I can single out a few people, that influenced me in terms of my, musicianship growth, but there have been just so many. Yeah.
You had brought up how you view pieces when it comes to like your perfect pitch, and it's affected like harmony, and that's how you view pieces.
Yeah.
And that's definitely affected how you learn new pieces, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is then, when you're learning, like, say, a completely new piece,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I assume by now you've heard like all the pieces that you're going to learn. But back then, when you were learning a new piece that you haven't heard before,
Yeah.
would it just be like you have to play it all the way through before you understand the piece? Or how would it work for you?
I love playing through pieces so that I know what I am dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sometimes there are pieces that I just knew because I heard it so much that I didn't even have to listen to recordings for. And like I don't listen to recordings in order to learn pieces. But sometimes, I mean, I listen to recordings in certain stages of learning. But when I am learning something, like the very beginning, I would like to play through it so that I know what I am doing. But it doesn't mean that the structure that I'm talking about is not like labeling where the exposition is or development is. It's more of the emotional structure of the piece. I don't know if that makes sense. And that you develop over time. You know, you don't learn it from the beginning.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, I've done so much theory work when I was in school. It's a fascinating it's a fascinating world, but in a way, and I really, really believe that it still informs my playing. But at the same time, theoretical work is generalizing a lot of things into sort of, like generalizing this. For example, we learn what sonata form is. That's really generalizing a lot of pieces that have been written.
Yeah.
Right? Like generalizing something about the structure from all those pieces. So labeling where the exposition and development is and then recap is really doesn't tell you much about that piece at all, you know, when you think about it. We learn about tonic dominant and subdominant. Like labeling really, really, really doesn't tell you much about what you're playing because you're just saying there is tonic sound, dominant sound, and subdominant sound. What's beautiful about actual music is that every tonic sounds different. Every dominant sounds different. You know, every Neapolitan sounds different, right? So I find it fascinating, yet when you go to your pieces or real pieces you're working on, that's like really trying to find what's so unique about that piece. Does that, you know, like instead of extracting something that could contribute to the generalization of the genre.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you ask what I do when I first learn music, I read through and see, try to find similar passages or, you know, different passages and something that strikes me and all, but that's just speaking of the process and that doesn't really tell me that I'm, Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of circle back to something you had said earlier because I never knew about it.
Okay.
But I didn't know that you used to conduct. Like
that was my passion.
Or like
Really?
I didn't even know you were in choir at all. And that
my
explains so
gosh.
much.
That was, I mean, I was a bit crazy. Yeah. I mean, I really was.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to sing. I love singing so much. And that was really my first love. And like, you know, well, I mean, you wouldn't know because you never lived in Korea. But in Korea, we used to have, I don't know if it still exists. It probably doesn't. But children's song competition. So you would premiere new songs. Or actually, that's a different type. And I entered that one too because my teacher wrote a piece. And she wanted me to enter. It's like all televised, you know, nationwide. And they're like just literally singing competition for children that you go and sing. And I would advance to a certain level, you know, it's all televised and everything. By the way, that's when I learned that my rhythm sucked because there was one piece that like I didn't advance beyond that because I could not come in with the accompaniment because now I know what that issue was, but back then I had no idea what that issue was.
Yeah.
This was like, I don't know, when I was like in the 4th grade or something. And now I know what the issue was because it had an upbeat, like, you know, with the pickup. I was supposed to come in with the pickup and I just couldn't. I think I just stopped counting or I freaked out because it was, you know, it was going to be televised everywhere. Anyway, but I love singing. I had an amazing choir director in elementary school who was so passionate, so like above and beyond like what she had to do. Like I went to public school and she brought us to, I think, every major concert venue in Seoul, Korea. Like, you know, back, I don't know, like, you know, this is 30 years ago or so. And it was amazing. I mean, the way she taught, and so I just admire her so much. And I went to middle school. It was more like, interlochen, kind of an idea, but not a boarding school. But the foundation was like Christian kind of, based foundation. So we had to sing in choir. Like everybody was in choir. Like there was a class choir.
Yeah.
And we had a class of like 55 kids. And we had to sing, we had to take turns in singing like during services, and we had a competition every year, and it was such a big deal. Such a big deal. Like had to sing a hymn and then a gospel, song in choir. And I conducted, all the way until I left Korea. And back then we didn't have YouTube, anything like that. So I would go to bookstores and literally look at all like 4-part or 3-part choral pieces and imagine the sound in my head. And then just conduct there, just practicing. Just practicing. And because I was in charge of selecting songs, right? And, looking back, that did so much for my musical growth. Because, looking at that age, looking at 4-part with piano accompaniment and being able to hear the sound in your head, imagining the sound in your head. And I did that for like 4.5 years. And I loved it. But then I also realized, I think at one point I stepped down for like a few months or something because I realized I couldn't really hear all 4 voices at once. And I was like, I'm not a good conductor, therefore I'm going to step down. and then I did it again later. But that did so much, a lot to my musical training. And I even I teach kids too now, and I tell them the best thing that you can do when you're that young is to be in children's choir, because it teaches so much about, listening and, basically listening.
Yeah. So I'm kind of amazed that you went from like conducting and doing choir and then found a passion for piano. Why didn't you end up pursuing more choral stuff or conducting?
Oh, you'll laugh at this. People told me that I should consider majoring in voice.
Yeah.
I was afraid of having hiccups on stage.
Really?
This was a serious issue. I was like, never, because I'm afraid of having hiccups on stage.
Yeah.
So that was not a career
Why
choice.
was that a worry for you?
I don't know. I really don't know. It just really worried me that I might have hiccups on stage.
Hey, genuine.
I know, right?
It's genuine
it
worry.
really was. And that was like, that's why I'm not going to be a singer.
Yeah. What about like conducting though?
Well, I told you that I realized I'm not going to be a good conductor because I can't hear 4 voices at once. But then, like, what I didn't know is that's something that you develop as, as a conductor, right? But because I was so into it. That I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just not good enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, this makes so much more sense to me now. I never knew that you were like conducting when you were younger or part of choir, and that makes more sense in lessons.
Yeah.
Because you use solfege all the time.
Yeah.
I was like, why do you use solfege?
Right.
I was so confused by that.
But solfege
wow.
in Korea, so we learn solfege in Korea. Like, that's what we don't do. There is Korean version of CDE. We call it like tarama, but we don't use that. We literally use do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do as note names. So I just grew up doing solfege. And even now, when I memorize stuff, I can solfege so fast. And it really helps with my memorization. Yeah.
No, I've been amazed by that too. In lessons, you'll just start singing the melody in solfege and like, how are you computing off of the solfege?
But it's really interesting because at Juilliard, the ear training teacher, Miss Cox, I will never this class was one of the hardest classes, and we all, we're so afraid of this class every single week. Actually, twice a week. Because she was so strict. She was extremely. There was like this girl in our class who was late. I don't know, actually many times. And Miss Cox literally calculated how many minutes she was late each class. And at the end of the class, she was like, you've been late for 43 minutes this semester or something like that in front of, it was a scary class. No, very scary. Yeah. But afterwards, we just think that was one of the best classes that we've ever had. But Juilliard does fixed do. I cannot do movable do. I just can't think that way.
Yeah.
Because basically I grew up doing fixed do in Korea, right? So that really made sense. But even for all the other kids, like American kids and or European kids who were not doing fixed do, she insists on that. And that's what we did. We never did. I don't think we even used like C, D, E. It was like always do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. If I remember correctly, I believe that she also thought that would help with the musicianship and the memory and all. Because I remember one of the projects that we had to do was for pianists. We had to play our pieces, but outer voices, but sing the middle voice with solfege, which I actually ask my students to do sometimes. If you're playing a fugue or something that has more important bass lines, sing the bass while playing, both hands or so.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of all of that has influenced you becoming an educator.
Yes.
But at what point did you decide that you want to go into education versus like performance? Yeah.
Oh, I never wanted to be a full-time performer. Never. Ever.
Never?
Never, ever. I don't know why. I really don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was little, you know how they ask you, so what's your dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Starting in kindergarten, becoming a teacher was my dream. And in kindergarten, my dream was to become a kindergarten teacher and a pianist. And then in elementary school, my dream was to become an elementary school teacher and pianist. So piano and, somehow it always... But I think I learned, not just in piano, my parents are, I think they are amazing parents. Mm-hmm. But I learned so much from my teachers also. And even in elementary, I remember specifically what the third grader teacher told me. I still, certain things I still remember. Mm-hmm. In middle school, like classroom teachers, like Korean literature teachers, I mean, they taught me so much. Mm-hmm. This one teacher in high school before I came here, she asked me to read Dostoevsky, and then we talked about it. We took a walk together and talked about it. And that book just like changed my sort of, at that age, anything that's that thick, would have impact on you, right? Mm-hmm. But these teachers just made me think, like challenged me in so many ways. So I think because I was so influenced by my teachers, I always wanted to be teachers. And my high school piano teacher, when I came to this country, he's still so dear to me. He exemplified, what it meant to be a musician and a person. And so because I had such excellent teachers in my life, I wanted to become one.
Yeah. So then by the time of Juilliard and stuff, you already knew that you wanted to be a teacher?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yes.
And technically by kindergarten, like you said.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I ever wanted to be I have terrible stage fright. And I mean, I was not the best pianist by any means, like starting in the 7th grade. So I knew that I wasn't the best. And yeah, so that was never, I mean, my parents are like, oh yeah, you can teach lessons. And that's how I sort of dreamed of being a pianist, not like world touring or anything like that. Yeah.
So you're like, I would hate to hiccup as a vocalist and as a pianist, so I'm just gonna.
No, I don't know. No, I don't know. I should mention this though. In Korea, maybe because this country's so small, no one had a career as a concert pianist. Mm-hmm. I think that might be a huge part of it. Even now, I don't think anybody has career as concert pianist just living in Korea. You know what I mean? I might be wrong, but I don't think you can actually make a living by concertizing just in Korea. Mm-hmm. So all the famous, well-known pianists were college professors. So if you wanted to live in Korea, if like your kind of future was, I'm going to live in Korea, then it was, become a professor. That was the thing, not like become a concert pianist. Because otherwise you would have to like, because I guess it was understood that if you ever wanted to concertize, it meant like touring the world.
Yeah.
So going back to Juilliard, you have an interesting experience because you went back to the school that you got your undergraduate degree in. I'm curious what the environment was like during your undergrad and how your perspective was different when you came back later.
You know how I said I learned 70% of what I know about piano playing from Mr. Sutsky? I feel like I learned how to be a pianist at Peabody and how to be a musician at Juilliard. And in my undergrad, I don't think I was ready to be in such a big school. It was a really difficult time in many ways, just trying to maybe pick a few things. But I don't think it was necessarily a competitive nature of it. It was more, I was heavily injured. I had to take a semester off. I got injured during undergrad auditions during that time, so February, March of that year, and I stopped playing as soon as the auditions were over. And I still couldn't play when I got to Juilliard in September. And the doctor told me that I should really consider taking a leave of absence. It was so bad that I couldn't type anything. My friends helped me. Like I would dictate, to them what to type, and they would type for me for classes. And I couldn't carry my laundry, and it was really bad. So then I took the second semester off in my freshman year. And I could play after a while. So overall, I think I took more than a year. Yeah, definitely more than a year off from playing. And when I came back, I could play, but not the way that I used to. I couldn't really express myself at the keyboard. I think both my teacher and I were afraid that I might get re-injured. So he was very careful about, how to do things. And I had fallen in love with piano during the last 2 years of my high school because I felt like I could express myself. And it was an emotional outlet for me. The last 2 years of my high school was, difficult because I didn't speak the language well. And this was my way out of, in my world. And when I couldn't do that at the piano, that was really hard. And the things that he explained to me with like technique and stuff, I just didn't have the language for it, for our understanding, or my soil wasn't ready in a way. You know what I mean? I just things didn't make sense to me. So it was really difficult. But everyone else was doing so well. You know what I mean? And I felt like I was getting behind. I mean, constantly feeling like I'm, behind. What am I doing? I didn't find necessarily that the environment in general was competitive. Like people say, I had really great friends and a lot, some of them I keep in touch with, actually many of them. And I have beautiful memories from there, from my undergrad. But at the piano, I wasn't free. And I remember just crying and crying for hours and hours at, in practice rooms. And because I didn't know what to do, I didn't know what I was doing. And, but when you're faced with those things, you also question, why am I doing this for? So then you question, the motivation of, pursuing what you're pursuing, right? And it made me grow. It really made me grow. And I got to Peabody, and Mr. Suski, he did his magic. And I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing, the amount of growth that I experienced. I just became a different pianist. He was able to connect the physical movement with the sound that came out of the piano. And he had beautiful sound, and I just so wanted to play like him. Actually, the one sentence that he shouted at me so much while, in the lessons would be, "Stop thinking, just play." And because I was thinking so much, because I had to be analytical about how to move my hands in order not to get injured. But he made it simpler for me, and that was great. And by the time that I had to decide on I took actually a gap year. I was able to get my assistantship for the third year, and I didn't want to leave Mizususuke right away. So I did a graduate performance diploma, which is a 2-year program. I just ended up just doing it 1 year, so I'd never finished, and then, went to doctorate. But then when I was auditioning, I got admitted to Peabody with really good financial package, and the same thing at Juilliard. And I debated so much whether to go back to Juilliard or stay at Peabody. And because the undergrad had been so difficult. But what finally got me to decide on going back was I wanted to be in an environment where I was the worst. I think I missed that, where I respected others so much. I mean, not that I respected a lot of people at Peabody, and I really wasn't the best one at Peabody either. But it was at Juilliard I met people whom I felt like I could never be like them, even if I were to be born again. There were some people that were just born to be a musician, just born to be a musician. So I went back. And then actually, if I may go back, how did I choose to be a pianist? Piano was the hardest thing for me, actually, when I was, I loved music. I was always inclined. But I told you, when I got to middle school, I knew that I wasn't the best one. And the piano was the one thing that in my life that challenges me the most. I felt like I always had to start from the beginning whenever I started a new piece. And that feeling of, it made me humble. And I like that feeling of, being made humble and being challenged. If that makes sense. And I'm glad I went back to, even after going back to Juilliard, even after getting a job here at Grand Valley, I remember calling my teacher, Boris Sutsky, one day, and I was like almost crying. I was like, I really, really wish that I had stayed at Peabody after all these years, and he goes, hey, but you got that degree and maybe that's what got you where you are. And, you never know. You never know, right? But, in life, you make one decision and you have to live with the consequences and the things that you lose because of that. And, every decision will come with some good things and some bad things. But I loved being surrounded by these amazing people at Juilliard, and they did shape me into who I am.
So it sounds like Boris Slutsky was very transformational for you as a student. What advice would you give for students going to different schools and looking for different professors? What are some things that they should consider, and how did you end up finding Slutsky? How did you know that you wanted to study with him? What were some of those factors?
I actually knew Mr. Sutsky in high school. I had played for a master class, and I remember what I played, and I remember where he said he was amazing in that one master class too. So I did audition for him at Peabody for my undergrad, and decided not to go, but I knew that he would be an amazing teacher. And I did play for him in one summer festival during my college years also, and he was still just so amazing. And my teacher back then, Mr. Martin, knew Mr. Susi really well too, and they respected each other. So that really helped in making the decision. But I guess I had always known that he would be an amazing teacher, that I wanted to study with him. In terms of how to find a teacher, I think going to summer festivals is the best way to try sort of to get to know the professors. But eventually, it's a gamble because there's no one great teacher for everybody. Mr. Martin was great in some ways, not so great with me in certain other ways. And I think a lot of it was just my history of injury, And Mr. Suski didn't have that with me. You know what I mean? Had I been injured right before coming to Mr. Suski, maybe he would have been different, right? So some people in all these years, and I love Julia Martin. I still, I'm still in contact with him. And actually the things that he taught me resonated with me, I think, in a way more later than when I was studying with him. And in all the studios that I've been in, there were some thriving students and there were some students who just struggled. And you have to try to find out as much as you want and how they play, not just how they teach, but also how they play. So try to find as much as you can and then go. And once you're in, I think your mindset should be like, I'm just going to get everything out of this person in the time that I have, Because I also find that if your mind is kind of still shopping when you're with somebody, you don't really, I don't think you're going to be learning so much. You've got to sort of trust what that person is going to do with you. Everyone is going to have something to offer, right? No matter who it is. And once you're there, your job is to learn that, whatever that is. I think it's really important to go to a good school because you learn from your peers, not just from your professors. I did say that I learned so much about piano playing from Mr. Suski, but that also came with students in Mr. Suski's studio. I learned so much from them. At Juilliard, I learned so much from a lot of people around me. And I was in a way lucky because I never thought that I was great. Because starting in the 7th grade, I was not a top student anymore. So going to Juilliard and not being the best student really, really didn't shock me. I was like, this is what I expected. I didn't expect that I would be a really, really good pianist here. But I saw so many people just like, I mean, it crushed them because they had been the top ones, the most talented one there in their hometown, and then they came here and they were like nothing, you know. There were some people that are like quite well known in our industry. Now they're really well known, but I know for a fact that they cried, you know, at Juilliard because they were struggling. What am I going to do with my life, with my career? And I think that's such an important lesson, to be in a place where you learn that you're not the best. Because that's when it makes you really think about why you are doing this. And I think that's such an important lesson, because after that, it has nothing to do with how talented you are. You know what I mean? After that, really, because you're on a mission.
Right.
You see what I mean? You do it for your reason, your own reasons, not because it brings you fame, not because this is the best thing that you can do, or and I believe if you're serious about something, you will always get to that block, no matter whether you're doing biology or, you know, or I don't know, English literature or being a musician or whatever. If you're really, really serious about what you're doing and, you know, really work hard, then you're bound to meet other people who are going to challenge you so much, who are going to be better than you. And it's at that point, are you going to give up because you feel like you're not the best anymore? Or are you going to keep going because you're on a mission now? And to me, that was just so important. That was so important. At Juilliard, one of the reasons why I say that it shaped my musicianship was because they talked so much about what it means to be a musician in this society. Not just about how you're going to make money. Actually, I don't think they ever talked about how to make money. and people complained about that. You know, people complained, and like even after we graduated, a lot of my friends are like, "Oh yeah, they never taught us how to do things, or how to make a career." But from my perspective, but we learned the most important lesson, which is how to be a leader, how to think like a leader, and how to think about our profession in a very, very meaningful way. And you're always going to find a way to make it happen and make a living if you have that belief that, that music means so much. This is so vital for humanity. I mean, we really believed that, at like age 19, 20, 21, like the school is your world, right? And somewhat falsely, I felt like the world revolved around classical music, because that was the environment that I was in. It was only later that I learned that was just not the case, and but we were that in that environment, and we really believed that classical music could change the world. And I don't think that's something that you can just purchase at a store. That type of mindset, thinking. It's not something that you can just grab out of a counter and think, okay, I'm just going to think like that from now on. It's an education, and you cultivate that with your peers, with the people that are really serious about what, the field. And that was one of the best lessons that I could ever ask for, I think, in my whole life. And I think that's why it's so important to be in a good school and be surrounded by amazing people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I resonate with that a little bit, because while I've been here at GV, I've been the only violin performance major in the studio. And how you were saying, like, to surround yourself with people that are quote unquote better than you or better at performance. I went to the Vivace International Music Festival over this past summer, and everybody there was amazing. I mean, it was like 13-year-olds, 18-year-olds that were playing like Paganini and like incredible things, just perfectly. And it like really opened my eyes to like, okay, wow, like this is the standard, and like that's what I have to live up to now. And then just coming back here, it's like, okay, now I have the mindset of what I need to be doing. And as I'm looking for master's programs as well, it's good to hear that information coming from you too, just to kind of what to be looking for and stuff. So yeah, I really resonate with that.
Yeah.
I want to turn our attention though to more Grand Valley focused things. While you've been here, you've started a few projects. I want to go to the GVPCS for the first one. Could you talk about that whole process of starting that? Like, you started that from the ground up, and that it's been really cool. You've brought in performers from around the country to come to Grand Valley and just perform for a couple days at a time. And it's been really great to just sit and have free music available with these really esteemed musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just talk about that process of how you started that, why you started it, and how you've been getting these players from across the country to come here?
Yeah. So we started during the pandemic, basically 2020, I think is when it started. So I had been at Grand Valley about 5 years. And I mean, there were just so many factors that came together, actually. So I'll just mention a few things. One was, I don't think I had been asked to play any Brahms chamber music in my first 5 years. And I had been asked to play a lot of chamber music, with colleagues at Grand Valley State University as well as Grand Rapids Symphony. And I don't think I had ever been asked to play any Brahms chamber music. And I thought this town is really, really missing out. There's so much great, Brahms chamber music that people really should hear. So that sort of got me thinking. And I think because there's a Grand Rapids Symphony, there's a lot of string chamber music going on in town, but there wasn't, I thought, as much piano chamber music going on in town. So that was number one. And number two, I got to play on these beautiful pianos all over the town in the first 5 years of my time here in Grand Rapids. Many churches that we work with, Grand Rapids Art Museum, they all have beautiful pianos that I thought could be played even more. So those were a couple of things. And one was, as a State University piano professor, I wanted to get our school name out there. I realized that a lot of folks that live in Grand Rapids don't necessarily come out here to Allendale to attend concerts. And so I thought, why not go to the communities instead of trying to bring them here? Mm-hmm. It is quite a bit of driving in winter, in snow. So all those things kind of came together because I felt like I was sort of, observing what was happening in town and thought that there was an opportunity for everybody to benefit from. So that's how it came together. And now we are a fully nonprofit organization. So we're not part of Grand Valley State University. We started out as part of Grand Valley, but I think last year or so, we became a full-fledged nonprofit organization. But we still bring concerts, of course, to Grand Valley State. It also happened during the pandemic when you guys were in middle school, maybe high school.
Early high school.
Middle school for Adam.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it was a very, very weird time, right? Really weird time, and I live alone, so I had practically no people contact for like how long, and Grand Valley started. We actually did open up school and we did in-person lessons pretty much like starting in that fall semester, but it was distanced in the recital hall. So I didn't really have a person sitting like next to me for, I want to say like 8 months or so, because we shut down in like February or March of that year until Thanksgiving when I went back to Korea. And I remember... and then I had to be, I couldn't join my family right away, because you had to be quarantined like back then, like for, 2 weeks or whatever. So I was in an Airbnb and I remember the night before I was about to return to my family, I cried because it's like the first time I'm going to be like next to this, people, human beings. It was quite the experience. And, this type of like experience like that makes you just question a lot of things, like what's life, and what do I want to do if I'm to die like tomorrow, like what do I want to do?
Yes.
I mean, all the, right? Like
she had her midlife crisis.
Yeah, no, quite seriously. And I was like, I want to play all Brahms chamber music, and that's how we started the first season. I played every single Brahms piano chamber music ever written.
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and I also wanted to play like serious music in this town. Like why are people not asking me to play Brahms? It's not going to take turn people away from the concert hall. We don't have to make things easy for people to listen to. We don't have to dumb down classical music. Like classical music, well played, will draw people, and that's still my belief. I always program like one heavy. I mean, you probably noticed that, like at least one heavy piece it's not going to feel like it's heavy and boring if it's played well, and that's our job to play well. And so that's always been the thing. And surprisingly, I mean, the first year we draw so many people to these concerts. People like, they still remember, oh my God, this is the first time we're getting back to the concert halls, or, concert hall as in like churches or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like hearing we did 3 Brahms pieces per program, like an hour and a half sometimes, because we did everything in like 6 programs. So that was, that's how it was born. And and then we keep going. Regarding how I draw people from all over the country, they're friends. And from year 1, I've always been very clear about paying the musicians. I did not pay myself for, I think, first 3 years or so. And even now, I don't get paid the same amount. And the board members are really on it. They're like, you really, really, really need to pay yourself better. Blah. But for me, I'm still on the mission now here. That's more important to me. So yes, it's free for everybody, but that doesn't mean that musicians are playing for free. No, not at all. Like we are one of the best, paying gigs in town, better paid gigs in town, and I try my best to pay them as best as we can. If we don't respect our professions, then nobody will. Nobody will. If you don't allow yourself to get paid, that probably means that you're okay with other musicians not getting paid either. And do you want to be in that profession? No, I don't think so. And anyway, so I share this mission, and I love playing with people. So then I asked my friends, would you consider coming? And I think part of it is that, going back to my schooling, there's one friend who said, I don't know what people say about competitions and all that. Like, competition amongst us at school. Like, if someone plays beautifully, that's great. That's something we have to all celebrate that together. And I was like, that is right. That is so right. And ever since, I've never been such a competitive person because I always knew that I wasn't going to be the best anyways. But that also just made me just genuinely respect others for what they can do and what they do. And I think my musical partners feel that too. You know what I mean? Like, I express my love for their playing, and I express my respect for their playing. And when I do play, when I play with them, my worry is not to screw them up. That's my concern. I just don't want to screw them up because they're giving so much, Yeah, people come and they have good experience with GVPCS, and, musicians know who have been here. So that makes it easier for me to recruit other great players also. So yeah, that's how it's been.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you've kept in contact with your friends from college and stuff, and it just goes to show that what you do in college and how you act in college really carries forward into your career too, and making those friendships. Because at the end of the day, we're colleagues, guys, at the end of the day, in 5-10 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. But I want to transition into talking more about Kemp now.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that process, how that got started, and why did you decide to start it with Dr. Jeb?
So it was actually 3 of us, Dr. Abigail Walsh and Dr. Jeb and myself. And I asked them if they would be interested in doing something like this together. And they were completely on board with me. So that's how it got started. I remember, oh my God, this is back in middle school, I think. We played at an orphanage. And a violinist friend, she got very upset at the end of the concert. And I said, why? And she said, I didn't play well. I didn't prepare well. And she was upset at herself that she took this opportunity kind of lightly, that, oh, this is just an outreach. And then she realized afterwards that it really should not have been that way. And so I had been exposed to sort of going out and playing in communities like that. And in high school, before auditioning for colleges, Mr. Julian Martin, he told me that it'd be good for you to go out to nursing homes and just try out your pieces before the audition. So I did, and I remember going to a facility that was kind of in a remote area. and they had an upright piano. And afterwards, this woman told me, oh, there's this pianist who, whenever he comes to play with, I think like Rhode Island Philharmonic or something like that, he always comes here and plays. And it really, oh my God, it struck me so much. I was like, and I think I did hear him play with the orchestra like the following week or something. And I bought the Mussorgsky Pictures in an Exhibition CD, by him. And it struck me so much. Oh my God, he carves out time to play for these folks that are just not able to go to concerts, right? So that also happened. And in college at Juilliard, they had a program where you actually get paid. We got paid very well. I think back then it was like $300 or something per gig. So I can't remember exactly how much it was. So there was an interview process. And if you pass the interview, then you become a fellow and you do these gigs. And for pianists, it wasn't like, we couldn't go into like, hospital, rooms or whatnot because there was no piano, right? But it was a life-changing experience for so many non-pianists because they would go to these places where they would like never go to otherwise and played. So that also, shaped me. And then in grad school, when I went back to Juilliard, I was going through kind of a personally really difficult time. And I started volunteering at this homeless shelter for AIDS patients, or people with AIDS. And they told me that, I was playing like for their worship services. That's how I started volunteering. And they told us that the environment is so harsh there that it's hard to get people out of their rooms. And I created a couple classical concerts and brought my friends to play with. And that I felt like, oh, wow, like music happens in these places. And that's why we do music. You know what I mean? It's like, that's my mission. Well, not mission field, but it's like where music lives, right? So I thought those were so important in my education in becoming who I am. One of my dreams as a pianist is being able to play something that I really love when I'm like 80 or 90 in a nursing home. I don't care about big stages. It's in certain sense, I really don't. Like I want to be able to play, and in order to be able to play like that, you need to develop your chops. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to play something simple at 80 or 90. Yeah. You know what I mean? And anyway, so that's why I asked Dr. Jeb and Dr. Walsh if they would be interested in doing something like that. I had been bringing my students to different places, but it wasn't organized. And I was also getting frustrated with myself, constantly thinking, how are they going to make a living as a musician? Like I felt like that was kind of in the back of my mind all the time when I would teach my students, and I hated that mentality. Like I was in a school and I learned to think like a leader, change the world with music, whereas I'm teaching my students to think like how to survive. You know what I mean? And that's a terrible way to teach. And I just really wanted to get out of that thinking process for my own self too. And so that they go and experience what the music, like how the music impact other people, and like to lead the activities so that I'm not just plugging them into, okay, go and play. Like I'll schedule everything and go and play. But like think about it. How like what's the facility like? Like what kind of music you want to bring, so that you're thinking more like a leader and really think about what music means to them, because hopefully that will motivate them to become a musician or to learn what kind of musician they want to be.
Yeah.
And
that process has been really great. At least I know for me, and I'm sure for you guys too, that when we had those workshops on, how do you program? What do you put on your program? How, what instruments do you program with what? And, how do you program differently for elementary schools versus nursing homes? And you never really think about that until you kind of get there, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. So that's been really, at least eye-opening for me in my development of going out and playing in the community. And then also, like you said, about just setting everything up in the groups and stuff. That's been really great just to kind of learn how that process goes. And, it's not just an all piano concert and it's not just an all string concert, but you've got saxophone or clarinet and then piano thrown in there, and just seeing we get the performance experience of going out and doing that, but then also it's the effect that it has on the people that we're playing for as well. And that's been really cool to see how it affects them so much. I mean, I've had many elderly people in nursing homes, or kids will come up and touch the violin, or just kind of engage with it, and they just tell you like how much it means to them, because like you said, like they don't get out much,
right.
Especially the people in the nursing homes, and elementary kids especially, like they're just kind of getting into the music field, and so giving that to them early and exposing them to that early is really cool to see. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed that some students who do a lot of competitions tend to play better at competitions than at concerts, because they're used to playing under pressure, and that's what motivates them. But competition is a stepping stone to get to the next level. And it's a great music making place too. I'm not saying that competitions are bad in any way. But if you don't play well in these community outreach concerts, you're not really a musician. You know what I mean? You have to, I think one needs to want to become a musician who will play well at any setting, who will treat any type of concerts as seriously as any other, like any paid gigs or whatever. Some people, I mean, if you look at like famous people playing in different recitals and such, people tend to play better at Carnegie than, some other places, right? It's natural, right? But there are certain artists who just play so beautifully anywhere. And I get so touched by that. And I think that's the real musicians that we are really. So when you do this community outreach, engagement concerts, like I hope that I've been making it sort of clear to my students, but you don't just go in thinking, oh, I'll just figure out what I'm going to play like, tomorrow, like today. You know what I mean? It has to be planned. It has to be done like very carefully. The planning has to be done very carefully. Every concert matters, and you just never know whose heart you're going to touch. And it's such a privilege to be able to play. Yeah.
In your view, why does this classical music still matter today, and how can it stay relevant? And I mean, should it stay relevant?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The issue of having a lot of older folks in the audience, I heard that so much when I was at Juilliard. I mean, I felt like that's all people talked about. If you go to New York Philharmonic, that's all you see. There's no younger folks. And that's, 20 years ago, right? I don't know answer to okay, so answer to your question is yes, I do think that it's very relevant. I think it's very important in our society and all. It's actually my biggest fear. One of the biggest fears in my life is that we treat classical music like oxygen. So it's in the air, so we don't pay for it. We don't pay for our oxygen. It's always there. We think that it will always be there. But what if it just disappears and we can't breathe anymore? And we have not prepared ourselves for it. I don't know, maybe that's not a good analogy, but it's like my fear is that it might disappear and we just find ourselves, oh my gosh, it disappeared. We don't have it anymore. And because it is everywhere. I wouldn't say everywhere, but it is available now. It is available to us. So that is one of my biggest fears, and that's why I feel like I'm on a mission. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, can I really do this for my whole life? Can I be in this fighting mode the whole time? It's a hard job, right? Defending what we do and what we believe in. To me, if we don't have emotions, and if we don't know how to express these emotions, if we don't understand these emotions, then life is not complete to me. Life really isn't. And And there's such depth in feelings in human life, and which I feel like sometimes we don't even let ourselves express or experience. Never mind express. Like expressing it requires skills to express feelings, I think, right? But even to experience those feelings as just a human being, I feel like we just don't do that much anymore. We sometimes say, oh, those dark feelings, oh, don't think about them. Those are bad feelings. Those are unhealthy feelings, unhealthy emotions. And we just, I don't know, don't cry, or, like simple things like, think positively. Think positively. I feel like that's half human. Half human. There are so many emotions in us that we don't even let ourselves sort of experience because we're afraid of experiencing them. I don't know if that makes sense. And as a performer, it's just so like you have to be so vulnerable in order to like go in that realm of emotions when you experience, like when you try to experience a piece, right? That has like that such emotional depth. And it's one of the scariest thing. I don't know about you, but like, if I have to like experience that piece in order to learn that piece and make it mine, then I really have to go deeply into it and like face the feelings that I just don't want to face on everyday life. But what's beautiful is that it transcends those human experiences and make it even more beautiful. Even those dark feelings become beautiful. I don't know if that's like that makes sense. But to me, classical music has that depth. It's so special in that it has those depths. So when people say, "Oh, classical music is so beautiful," I don't know. I don't think it's just expressing the beautiful emotions of human experience. I think it actually expresses such dark emotions of human experience, and it is so human, and it ties. I mean, I'm not gonna go into like my faith and all that, but like it's just thinking like that's how I believe in my path as a musician so much, and because I think it shows all these human feelings that are so vital to and so essential to our human existence, and that helps us to connect with other people, become empathetic with other people, and be fully human. And I'm afraid of losing that if we lose classical music, or if we lose great performances of classical music. Just having classical music around, I don't think is enough. So we need those great performers to actually make the music come to life.
In your life, how do you differentiate your identity as a musician and just as a human?
I am a musician. My job is to play and teach music and advocate for music. If I ever change my job, I don't think my musician in me will go away. So in a way, that's always going to be my identity in that sense. But do I drive my self-worth from it? No. Because when you start driving your self-worth from how well you play, and even more dangerously, how well you teach, then you are going to be constantly swayed by how well you just did or how badly you just did. But that's where my faith comes in, and that's how I view my life. It's what I do, and it's a very, very, very important part of my life. But it doesn't define who I am, or it doesn't make me a better person or a worse person. I have to do my best because it matters a lot to me, and that's my job on this earth, to do my job really well. That's my responsibility, but I don't have to be the best. I really don't. I just have to be the best that I can be. I mean, it's very cliche to say, but in a way, like the fact that I'm not as talented as some other people, like actually I'm completely fine with that because I have less responsibility. Right? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I actually find it very comforting that I'm not super talented, because if I am actually super talented, I have a lot more responsibility. But I just have to work really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned over the years too that even though I'm not the best, I still have a place in the world. It's so comforting to know. it's like, oh, I can still make a difference in the world, even though I'm not the best. That's totally fine. And at the same time, it's also comforting to know that if I die today, things will be fine tomorrow. My students will find better teachers. Like, I'm not that important. You know what I mean? Like, but it's not dismissing the position that I'm in, but it's just like knowing I'm here because it's my responsibility in my life, this is the job that's given to me. Like, not as a Grand Valley teaching job in that sense, but it's like a job that's given to me And when I am done, I am done. Until that job is done, I am gonna keep going. And it's so good to know that I don't have to be the best, but I take pleasure in trying to become the best that I can be. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, do you think musicians should have a say in politics? And what kind of role does the musician play in society?
I think it's actually tying back to like what I said about the relevance of classical music. So to me, before I'm a pianist, I want to be a musician. And before I'm a musician, I want to be a good citizen. And I'd love to instill that in my students too. Whenever I get a chance. I mean, you two are in my studio, and I try to create good studio, environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think it's important, right? Because it's a small society, right? When you say like political, I think we need to be aware of what's going on, and we need to have a voice, like because we're a good citizen. You know what I mean? You may choose to make political statement through your music, and quite a few people do that. Some people decide not to play in certain countries, for example. Some musicians because of political reasons, and you can. But even if you don't, you need to be aware of what's going on because you want to be a good citizen because a good citizen means, being a good citizen means being a good person, I think. And to me, that's where I stand. I don't know if you have noticed, but the Grand Valley Piano Chamber series, the season theme for this year is Finding America and celebrating 250th anniversary of this country's founding. And I had given a lot of thought on what to do in order to, celebrate the occasion. And I decided to feature composers that found their new home in this country. And that topic is very dear to my heart because I'm an immigrant myself also. And no, I came to my ceremony, so you witnessed that. And then actually what you said at lunch afterwards, it struck me. You said, I had never been in the same room with so many people from so many different countries. Mm-hmm. And because I think there were like 40. I can't remember what. Like it was maybe more than 40. I don't remember.
I think it was like
80.
Yeah, it was like 70 or somewhere around there.
Yeah. It was kind of crazy. It really was crazy, and celebrating that we are a country of immigrants. Whether people are like me who are first generation immigrants or 20th generation, right? But unless you're like your ancestors were really, really from this continent, you are an offspring of an immigrant. And so this country is really a country of immigrants. And to me, that's important. I don't want it to be a political statement, but I think that's what a good citizen does, to think about what it means to find America. Like Finding America, I thought would have a double meaning. One is these composers found America. And the second, we're always defining something. Like it's always an ongoing process. So how are we finding America these days? So the title "Finding America" for this season is has dual meanings. And I'm not like trying to be political in any way, but I think that's what a good citizen does. Like to think of where we are in our time and how we can be a better citizen.
So as one of your students, I'm very curious what like a performance preparation, like the day of, looks like for you. I know that you mentioned earlier the stage fright is pretty bad for you, but I'm curious what your like pre-performance ritual is like, and what What does it look like?
My stage fright has gotten better in some sense. Chamber music, definitely. Solo is still very scary, but I don't think of it as a bad thing anymore. I really don't. Someone like Emmanuel asks, he has terrible stage fright apparently, and it's a good thing. Like, it means you care. It means you really, really care. Mm-hmm. So I don't think of it as a bad thing anymore. And I've learned to appreciate. I've experienced, and you too know because I talked about it in class, how I have experienced multiple times where I didn't know that this was going to be the last time that I played for certain people, and then some people just passed away, and then just having experienced those things, every performance now takes a different meaning. You know what I mean? Like, I also don't know when my last time of performing will be. And I mean, it sounds so dramatic, but I literally go on stage thinking that this might be my last performance. And that changes your perspective. So yes, I am still afraid of memory slips, and all that. And I have to prepare very differently for solo recitals, like in long term. But it's different. In terms of on the day of, the only thing that I really try to, well, actually, there are several things, but one is I don't eat meat if I can help it. Because I once had meat and I played a competition and I was so dizzy on stage. Oh. I think I just hadn't, my body hadn't digested enough. So that, oh my God, it was a horrible experience. So I try not to eat something heavy on the day of. Mm-hmm. A few days before I go into definitely solo and also in some ways chamber, I try to not eat sugar because it does mess up with concentration level and energy level. I feel I try to get some sleep on the day of, like taking a nap or so. Yeah, but I think that's really about it.
Do you run through the program
on the day of?
Yeah.
Not solo chamber. Sometimes people want to do that, and that's fine, and sometimes they don't, and yeah. No, not solo. I actually had friends some really, really great players who really refused to do much at all on the day of because they wanted to build it up. You know what I mean? Emotionally, right? So that you give it all. Being a professor and performer, you just have to wear different hats so much that it has almost become I just have to do multiple things on the day of, so I don't have the luxury of just focusing on that performance at night anymore. Sometimes I have to teach 8 o'clock class and then do a solo recital at night. So yeah, but doing a run through, I find that it actually, the more I run through so close to the performance, it kind of washes away the details that I've been working on and just makes me focus on the things that I just messed up. And then on stage, I mess up even more because then I'm thinking about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So as we're wrapping up this episode, I've got 2 final questions for you. The first one being, what's one piece of advice you want students to take away from this episode or in general? And the second is, are there any books or resources you would recommend to students?
I don't know what the one thing is. I think that one thing will be different for everybody. So, and the resources, and you said books or resources. I mean, there are just so many, so I don't know if I can pinpoint just a few. But to me, it's not just music reading or the music related books. Sometimes they are, The Inner Game of Tennis was a really good, good book for me in terms of actual, piano playing, and Seymour Bernstein's, I forget the title of the book. Do you remember the title of the book? Anyway, if you look up, it's a really, really famous book. I can't remember the title of the book. But I read it first in Korean. I liked it so much that when I moved to this country, I read it in English, and it's still in my bookshelf, one of the go-to books. But there are just so many.
Yeah. And for anybody interested in learning more about the organizations you're a part of or staying up to date on what you're doing, where can they go?
My website is myname.com, and the Grand Valley Piano Chamber series is gvpcs.org.
Great. Okay. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap up today's guest episode. I want to thank Adam and Noah for being part of this episode and helping with the interview. And of course, thank you to Dr. Cho for sharing your insights into the music world and for joining us on the podcast. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mm-hmm. If you or someone you know would like to be featured on Tutti Talks, feel free to DM us on Instagram at Tutti Talks Podcast or email us at tuttitalkspodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to follow us on all our socials to stay updated on guest highlights and upcoming episodes. We're passionate about reaching as many musicians as we can, and you can help us do that. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a fellow musician, colleague, or friend, whether it's someone in your ensemble, your studio, or someone who would appreciate these conversations. Every share helps grow our community. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Tutti Talks. Keep the music playing, keep the conversation going, and we will see you in the next one.